Well, what I can say for sure is that it's been a weird couple of weeks for the US dollar, for a certain former US president, and the last few days have even been very weird for crypto. It's not every day that a sitting US senator declares war on an asset class, but that's where we are right now in crypto and in Cardano. Ready? Let's go. Today, we are going to discuss the dragon embracing a declaration of war against crypto, why she has millions of reasons to feel so strongly, more info on an open source Plutus application backend, and a new blockchain education program in Cardano. If your first thought about this image is that her attire is not at all appropriate for the desert battlefield on which she apparently is trying to engage us, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. So here's where we are. Politico ran this article some time ago. Elizabeth Warren is building an anti-crypto army. Some conservatives are on board. Warren is zeroing in on national security concerns as her focus for potential crypto legislation, even as she raises red flags about a host of issues in the space, from consumer protections to environmental impact. So you might argue, if you're trying to steelman the case for the dragon here, you might argue that she did not say this herself. This is an article written by Politico. She's not saying she's building an anti-crypto army. But then you would have instantly realized that that narrative was dead wrong when you saw this post from her personal account. She also has an @Senator Warren account. This is her @eWarren account, her personal account. She says, "I'm in this fight to put our government on the side of working families. Join our re-election campaign today." And what does she have down here in this gigantic graphic? Politico, Elizabeth Warren is building an anti-crypto army. And look at the determined look on her face. She is so determined, looking off into probably the sun. Looks like she's looking directly in the sun, the way the light's hitting her there. But hilariously, if you look at this next part, sort of a revolving headline thing, the Boston Globe says she is celebrating a long-sought victory, and that makes it look like she can now get over-the-counter hearing aids. I don't think that's what they wanted to convey here, but if you read it, as over-the-counter hearing aids are finally available, Senator Warren celebrates a long-sought victory. Makes it sound like she's the one who needs hearing aids, which is kind of consistent with the fact that she doesn't seem at all to listen to anyone who wants to embrace technological progress. I think there are a lot of Americans who definitely like technological progress, like the cutting edge technological progress we see in crypto. She's not hearing any of that because over-the-counter hearing aids were not available. But it looks like she's always been able to read what we write about her. Here, Nick Carter of sort of Bitcoin maximalist fame turned to some kind of an EVM world investor slash VC, whatever he was. Here he has a little story about Elizabeth Warren's staff. He says, "True Liz Warren story. One time I took a call with her chief of staff. Don't ask. She recalled a tweet where I had called her a despot. Liz Warren's team copes and seethes over your tweets and saves them in a dossier of mean tweets. Never forget that." If you're curious, why would Elizabeth Warren, why would the dragon be so against crypto? She's been very, very against crypto from the start, from her very first comments about crypto. It's always been extremely anti-crypto. Why is this the case? I think this little post might tell us about a few million reasons she would be against crypto. This post says, "Message to Gen Z. If you want to make a lot of money in your life, consider becoming a useless professional politician instead of a crypto degen." And we scroll down and we see this information. Net worth, 67 million. Salary, 285,000. So of course I was curious. Just because someone posts a screenshot on Twitter doesn't mean it's necessarily true. I should point out though, Cardano Well made a very good point about this post. He said, and I'm going to have to paraphrase here for YouTube purposes, but he said, "Spending the last years of your life fighting magic internet coins like a miserable old person when you're very rich from mastering the corrupt system and could be sipping cocktails on the beach 24/7 while your grandchildren frolic around you and enjoy your lavish wealth is a choice. I agree. Cardano will. It looks like that proposed information about her net worth comes from this website, canowledge.com, which appears to just be like a general celebrity information website. So maybe this isn't totally accurate. But while that website may be of questionable accuracy, we can at least hope that Forbes is in the right neighborhood. And Forbes, clear back in 2019, was saying she'd already built a fortune of $12 million. And they try to kind of break it down. They talk about how she bought a house in Cambridge for something like $447,000. It's now worth $3 million. And she has this sole proprietorship where she is like making book deals on the side, and it looks like she's made quite a bit of money from that. But it still doesn't quite make sense. Before she became a politician, her and her husband were law professors, and her husband still is a law professor. It doesn't really make sense that you take office and all of a sudden you have a fortune of $12 million. But what does make sense is that if you have a fortune of 12 million US dollars, you're opposed to an asset whose sole mission seems to be to replace the dollar. If there's this asset class and the whole asset class is sort of about this scenario where the US dollar is debased, devalued to such an extent that this brand new asset, to the mainstream at least, can sort of swoop in and take over the position of world reserve currency. If you're that $12 million holder, you're probably opposed to that. This is sort of like, Bitcoin holders or Ethereum holders being opposed to the idea that another top 10 cryptocurrency might come up and take their spot. I think we know why some of these politicians are against cryptocurrencies. I mean, they've got all kinds of ideological arguments against them. Her arguments against crypto seem to be that she just thinks we're all criminals. But I think deep down, if you're a large dollar holder, it's kind of a logical position for you to be opposed to crypto. And what we're finding time and time again is all these politicians who seem to be all about the rhetoric, the kind of like anti-financial industry rhetoric, anti-fintech type rhetoric. Time and time again, we find out that they've amassed quite a nice, tidy little fortune for themselves in the time that they've been in office. Regardless of why she actually hates us, it's obvious that she hates us. I don't even think she really needs a reason. That's why I've been calling her the dragon for like a year or however long it's been, because it was obvious she was going to be the great irrational beast that crypto was going to encounter on the road. Even Cardano would have to deal with repercussions of this dragon deciding to come and land on the road, spreading fire, chaos, and destruction in its wake. This is the impact of this senator on crypto. But it looks like she maybe is responsive to the unforeseen public reaction to this kind of language. Here, this person's implying that this was once on her public timeline and now it's been hidden from her public timeline. So it's kind of interesting. I wonder, whoever runs against her in Massachusetts, I could see them dragging out this image and showing it to everyone. I don't know how well this is going to play with the under 30, under 40 crowd even. Dragon. You might remember from several days ago, I reported on the announcement from Genius Yield that they were open sourcing their Atlas Plutus application backend for the good of the community. If you want to hear all about that, there's a webinar on the Atlas Pab, now live on the Emergo Academy website, and there is Lars on the webinar to explain it all. Speaking of learning, this came out today. Very much looking forward to the release of the Education Alpha program. Over the last few months, we've been building and can't wait to get initial feedback from the 600 plus alpha testers that signed up during Summit 2022. And this is the Cardano Foundation's Blockchain Education Alpha program, ready to take part in shaping the Cardano Foundation's education course and helping to create an excellent blockchain learning experience for everyone. We value your feedback, whether you're a blockchain newbie, an enthusiast, or an OG. And then there's a launch the course graphic. So I'm curious. There's always a lot of talk, a lot of discussion about what it is the Cardano Foundation does. It'll be really interesting to see sort of the public response to this. If people think it's a valuable contribution to the ecosystem, but I think it's Cardano. People speak very freely in Cardano, so we'll definitely get to hear people's opinions on this. Finally, some would argue that people shouldn't be worried about crypto overtaking the dollar on longer timelines when articles like this, with headlines like this, are circulating right now. Just in, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the BRICS countries, are developing a new currency. And this is all apparently according to the State Duma Deputy Chairman, Alexander Babakov. So obviously, there's been a lot of, I don't want to call it scare media, but we'll say a lot of scary mainstream media coverage of a lot of the de-dollarization stuff that's happening globally. When it comes to the BRICS countries, though, I think there's one thing, and it's probably worthy of its own whole video, but there's one thing that I think is interesting when you think about the BRICS countries. So this is a demographics chart. The way this works, we've got certain age groups from 0 all the way up to 100. And what you see here, in this case, this chart is for Nigeria in 2020. This is what you want to see. You want to see a huge number of young people. You want this to look like a normal pyramid, with the smallest groups being the very oldest and the biggest groups being the very youngest. This is what you're looking for when you want to drive the economic growth of a nation state. You want to have a lot of young people. That means they're going to get into their 20s and their 30s and be consumers, and then in their 40s and 50s they might be highly skilled workers, and then after that they retire. They stop spending quite so much money. They're not out working and spending every single day. They stop kind of driving that economic growth. You want a lot of young people because they're going to be the consumers who will consume the goods and services and drive the whole economy. You want to see a pyramid that looks like this. Here's what you don't want to see in terms of demographics. This is a demographics chart for the Russian Federation in 2021. And you can see here big problems, because we've basically got more people in their early 60s than you have in any age group under 30. You've also got more people in any of the age groups between 30 and 50 than you do in any of the age groups under 30. This is really bad for economic growth. This is exactly what you don't want to see. You don't want to see more people in their early 60s than in any group under 30. You don't even want to see anybody in there. You don't want to see any group in their 30s that's so much bigger than any of the groups under 30. This is not good. This is not a good picture for future economic growth. When these age groups get to be these ages, you see contraction of an economy. You don't see economic growth. You see contraction. This is very bad for economic growth. Who's another big partner in the BRICS bloc of nation states? China. Look at their demographic chart. Again, we see maybe the very largest group is in their late 50s. In their late 50s, other big groups, early 50s. Then you've got a lack of population. Then you've got another group at 30. And then below that, giant hole. You have a giant hole. And again, we see none of these age groups under 30 can compete with the older age groups. When they come of age, they're going to be much smaller than the current population in those ages. This again is what leads to economic contraction, not economic growth. This is the upside down pyramid. You've got a pyramid like we want to see up here, but that's just comparing like 95-year-olds to 60-year-olds. They're basically out of the workforce. Down here, where you want to see good populations of workers and consumers, they've had it for a while, but coming up, this entire age group under 30, this is the exact opposite of what you want to see. This does not lead to economic growth. This does the reverse. This leads to economic contraction. Admittedly, the demographics of India look much, much better. The demographic pyramid in India is much better than China or Russia. But if you are looking for economic growth over the course of decades, which of course every nation state and every economy certainly is, you don't want to anchor yourself to a currency tied to the demographics of either of these two countries. The demographic situation is not good. They've already experienced all of the good growth years that they're going to get for the foreseeable future. The demographic story tells us that the economies linked to those demographics are not going to be the good stories they might have been in the past. The demographics are actually telling a very different story. So we'll see how that works out for the ambitions of certain parties in this BRICS block of countries. I have a feeling it's not quite as rosy as some of this scare media would have us all believe. I hope you're getting ready for a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.